As flutists, we are never done working on our tone. Whether you started this video hoping to go from a fuzzy sound to a clear one, a thin sound to a rich one, or just to go from simple ideas about tone to more artistic ones, I've got you. We're going to talk about all of it. There are 3 more videos in the Aspiring Flutists Epic Inspiration course, one each on low, middle, and high registers. But this video will focus on general practicing and discovering your most clear and resonant home-based tone across the entire range of your flute. Before we dive into the details, allow me to read a short passage from John C. Krell's Kincadiana. We all strive for a good tone, but in practice, a good tone is that particular quality which is appropriate to the period, style, or character of the music being performed. Like the raw energy of a Beethoven, the diaphanous pastels of a Debussy, or the harvest colors of a Brahms. Since much of music is sheer sensory imagery and intimately involved with our world of physical and psychical experience, ideally, tone should be able to reflect life impressions such as motion, tension, relaxation, excitement, repose, anguish, joy, beauty, and more. For years, I struggled with adding depth and roundness to my sound. My big breakthrough finally came when I realized I was trying to sound like a sweet and clear female voice, and what worked better was a darker, richer, more masculine home-based tone. Today, I enjoy the fluidity and versatility of switching between feminine and masculine tones, sweet, clear, and bright, dark, rich, and mysterious, and many, many other types of tones as well. As we travel together through this video about flute tone, keep in mind that the tone concepts you have now are not necessarily the ones you will stick with after further exploration. One of the most common mistakes that flute players make is overblowing. It is so tempting to think that just blowing lots of air will help you to have a better sound. Now, don't get me wrong, a strong, steady airstream will always produce a better sound than a sporadic, wimpy one, but I'm talking about taking things to the next level. When you want to find your most beautiful tone, searching for the secret sweet spots, the ones you can only find through listening, they become almost impossible to find if you've already blown right past them. When searching for the secret sweet spots, remember that small changes in air angle can make big differences in the sound. I'm going to be using this pencil to show you approximately the direction I'm blowing. Notice how it changes as I shift downward. A great idea to explore different air angles, keeping listening as your top priority, of course. Considering the fact that the smallest embouchure adjustments, air pressure changes, and more can create dramatically different sounds, it's essential that you stay patient, open-minded, and curious when you are searching for the secret sweet spots, listening for more clarity, or trying to make any kind of meaningful changes in your sound. Too often, flutists not only overblow, but they become convinced that a certain embouchure, air, or other experiments didn't work simply because they were making changes that were way too big. If a flute teacher asks you to aim the air more down, keep in mind they are talking about micro adjustments, not big sweeping changes. Remember, the secret sweet spots can only be found through listening. A common source of stress for flutists is how to make the perfect embouchure. While I agree that it is helpful to switch from, say, a too smiley embouchure to a more centrally focused one, and doing that may take some time and dedication, experimenting with embouchure changes doesn't have to be a negative experience. Flutists have all different sized mouths, differently shaped lips, different lengths of tongue, and for that matter, completely different bodies altogether. I'll share some basic embouchure principles that I think will get you close to a good setup for you, but do remember that your embouchure will be absolutely unique because you are absolutely unique. As my flute fairy godmother, Claire Johnson, often said, there are 1,000 right ways to play the flute. Let's take a moment and review the embouchure basics I would teach a beginner. Keep in mind that even at advanced levels of flute playing, it's always worth experimenting to find those little micro adjustments that can make a big difference in your sound. To establish a home base, place the head joint in the valley of your chin. Next, you're going to feel the edge of your lip meeting the edge of the tone hole. And finally, you're going to roll in until you're covering about 1/3 of the tone hole. Covering 1/3 is a pretty good home base regardless of the size and shape of your mouth and face. Keep in mind that covering way too much of the tone hole will tend to produce a thin and compressed sound that likes to go flat. Conversely, if you don't cover very much of the tone hole at all, or maybe you don't even cover any, that is going to be very likely to produce a fuzzy sound that wants to go sharp. So once again, valley of the chin, edge to edge, edge of your lip to edge of the tone hole, and then covering about 1/3. Last tip for head joint home base beginning steps to embouchure basics. If you hold your head joint like this, so that if you accidentally push, it goes away from you, that can be a great thing both for you and any students because you don't want to have the accidental habit of putting a lot of pressure on your face. So practice with the head joint lots of times to establish that home base. After you've played the takeaway game with your head joint so that you can feel a familiarity with a home base position that's, just the basic idea at first, set your head joint aside for a moment and put your finger where your flute normally goes in the valley of your chin. Now, simply blow on your finger. Can you feel the air on your finger? Can you make the airstream a little faster? If you can't feel the airstream on your finger in a tangible way, chances are you might be blowing across your finger, kind of like you would to make a sound on a Coke bottle. But for a more mature flute tone, experiment with aiming down so that you actually do feel the airstream on your finger. Then you're going to transfer it back to your head joint. But first, try the same thing you did on your finger on just the smooth metal part of the head joint. and listen for that steady airstream. Then finally, you can go back, valley, edge to edge, cover 1/3, facing away from you with your fingers. It's fun to talk about the bunny muscle because you can make a bunny face with it. My bunny face is kind of silly. But this area right here, I call the bunny muscle. And it's really a combination of muscles in your upper lip and then even by your nose. Sometimes I think of like a nose stretch. Anything you can do to help get that feeling of aiming down is going to help you get closer to that more mature flute tone and a better home base where you can start listening for those secret sweet spots. I tend to put dots on my flute and my students' flutes to help with a nice alignment of the head joint and the flute body that's the same each day. I find a position for the dots based on an easy access to covering 1/3 and then also promoting a natural wrist position. So this is just a side note. We'll talk more about body mapping and positions later, but I don't believe in holding the flute in a way that torques the wrist, that causes like a big bend. If you're practicing for hours and hours, weeks, months, years, and you've got strain like that, that's gonna promote injury. So when I put those dots on the flute, it's based on covering 1/3 and natural wrists. Back to the embouchure and finishing up our perfectionist trap alert. This whole embouchure discussion has been to encourage you not to be overly perfectionistic about the embouchure. I encourage you not only to use a mirror to do all kinds of embouchure experiments. Seriously, sky is the limit, but also to radically prioritize sound, not shoulds and shouldn'ts, as your primary measuring stick for deciding if you like embouchure changes. So I'm sure if you're a serious flutist, you've spent some time in the mirror studying your embouchure, your aperture, the angles. I just want to be an advocate for you trying something in the mirror, maybe briefly, but then go back to that walking around the room, finding the sound you really like, and then we go from sound to feeling to looking in the mirror and going, oh, that's what I'm doing when it works. Use the mirror as your friend and as a loving, neutral, objective experiment tool, not a where am I supposed to put my flute? What is the right and wrong answer? Don't be a robot. Just go, oh, interesting. Have curiosity, open ears, open mind, open heart. Models and bridges are so helpful anytime you practice. Find your favorite notes and model the notes around them to match your favorite notes. You can mimic the embouchure, air angle, air speed, air pressure, air amount. You can even mimic the tongue position or the vowel that you're using. Here is my favorite note exercise, 3 different ways. It can really help you match other notes to your favorite notes. Let's say you're practicing a melody in A minor, and the A is really nice, but the D is kind of fluffy or out of tune. You can study everything you like about the A, and then if the D is very different, you can notice, oh, how is it different? What is the difference in the sound? How would I describe it? What are my lips doing? What is my air doing? And little by little, you can bring the D to a quality and a type of tone that sounds more like the A. Little more lips like the A. Now I'm going to match the air speed of the A. And be willing to try this many, many times until you love your D as much as you love your A. A second way you can do the favorite note exercise is to play a melody all on your favorite note. Let's say the melody is something like this. And again, my A will sound nice and clear, but maybe the other notes are not as clear. And even that last A was affected by the kind of fuzzy sound of the other notes. I'm going to practice connecting with my first note, the lovely A, really appreciating the core and everything good about it, and then play that melody all on the A. And then maybe just add one other note back in. And stay on that step until that note actually matches. My C wasn't quite like my A yet. So again, lips, air, sound, steady, steady. Throw in fluttering or singing anytime you like. Notice how I'm exploring and trying different things, all while keeping my A the model. The third way that you could try the favorite note exercise is to add some chromatic fill-ins. So if the melody is I could go slowly and out of time using a chromatic bridge between pitches. That way I can transfer the good quality of my favorite note to all the other notes with a smooth pathway. Worth it to take your time and immerse yourself in the world of sound so that your tone is just as clear, beautiful, rich, and resonant on every note as it is on your favorite notes. This might sound really funny, but I've found one of the biggest busy brain tone triggers for flutists is their tongue. I've noticed time and time again that when a flute player's mind is chaotic, so is their tongue. I'll often mention to my students, your tongue is having a party in your mouth. I'll put a link in the information below to a great video of Claire Johnson talking about tongue stretches, and I really hope you watch it. But for now, here is a brief description of my beautiful flute tone tongue philosophy. First and foremost, relax the back of your tongue. Look in the mirror and learn how to lay it down in the back so that the air path from your throat is unobstructed. If you say the word all and then leave off the L's, you can get a good start on figuring this out. See if you can see all the way back to your throat like you can here with me. Next, experiment with a touch spot for the tip of your tongue. Some flutists like to feel the tip of their tongue touching behind their bottom teeth. I like to feel it right behind my lip. Your tongue does its best work when it acts like a slip and slide for the air. Pulling your tongue back blocks your throat and it creates a gap that the air kind of swirls around in before it leaves your embouchure and heads to your flute. A smoother path creates a smoother tone. After that, it's all about trying different vowels and collecting any clues you can about letting your tongue facilitate the air rather than obstruct it. Remember, as always, to let sound be your guide when deciding what you want to do with your tongue. The flute runs on momentum and flow. And often, accidentally, when working on the tone of a specific note or even longer tone exercises, flutists can tend to suck all the momentum and flow out of the equation. No frozen flutist syndrome, please. Isolated tone exercises can definitely be helpful and revealing, but keep the music and motion in your tone studies anytime you can. I enjoy discovering more clarity and beauty in my tone in the context of moving exercises. If I don't have a lot of access to the sweet spots, whether it's because I'm not fully warmed up or I'm not as much in flute shape as I would like to be, I will often swap out fluttering or singing and playing as built-in warm-ups anytime I like. Here's a little demo of my major triplets exercise. I'll begin in C major, singing and playing on my way up, then flutter tonguing on my way down. I'll switch back to exploring my home bass tone for the G major that comes next. I'll include a link to the piano accompaniment for the major triplets exercise in the information below so you can try it. I love this exercise and it's a great supplement to long tones or the epic warm-up, which I'll tell you about later. It works best when you use the accompaniment on YouTube if you have a good pair of headphones. I recorded the accompaniment on a nice Steinway, so it's also very good for working on your tuning. The goal as you play triplets is that in the zone feeling as you find your most gorgeous tone along the way. So remember to have fun and keep the goal of not only beautiful resonant tone, but also, as always, sing along, surrender. Fluttering, singing and playing, they are the best. Not only are they real extended techniques that composers do write into flute repertoire, but they're also wonderful tone exercises. They relax your throat and get your airstream nice and steady at the same time. Now, don't worry if you can't roll your R's. I can roll my R's, but I don't use that method for fluttering anyway. Instead, I use the one in the back of my throat. It's more like gargling. Take a little sip of water. Gargle for a long time so that you can get used to the feeling. Then transfer it to your flute. If you go back and forth, not getting frustrated, you will figure it out. Now, if you let frustration sneak in, you might accidentally fall into the trap of only playing for like half a second and then quitting. But keep in mind, if you do that, the lack of follow through is the reason why the fluttering is not working. So go back and forth, long gargle, long attempt at fluttering. Don't give up, you'll find your way, and it's so great to be able to flutter tongue. It's worth it. Same thing with singing and playing. Let's hum that same low A. Hum nice and loud, maybe feel a buzz in your lips. Then add some blowing. Hold your hand close to your face so you can feel the air. Step 3, take it to your flute and keep the hum going no matter what. You might have to hum, add the blowing, sing and play over and over and over again, but same thing as the fluttering. Follow through and don't give up. Here's a really good way to move away from busy brain and toward sing-along surrender when developing your clearest, most resonant, beautiful singing tone as you practice. Instead of falling into the double whammy busy brain perfectionist trap of freaking out anytime you have fuzz or spit in your sound or around your sound, learn to love your air cloud, or kind of a funny way of saying it, learn to love the fuzz. Does that sound weird to you? Well, I really mean it. I want you to love your air cloud, love the fuzz and even the spit. The air cloud surrounding your sound is not only a cushion delivering the ringy, pingy, yummy, sweet spot center to your audience's ears, it's also the raw material from which you can sculpt your sound in mid-air as you play into something richer and more resonant with each passing musical moment. As Brené Brown says, we cannot selectively numb. So if you rebel against or try to ignore the fuzzy parts of your sound, you are also blocking your listening to all the good stuff. Swap judgment for curiosity. Stop being an air cloud hater and enjoy loving all the elements of your sound as you practice your flute. Going on tone quests to find the clearest, purest, most resonant sweet spots in all registers of your flute, as well as dedicating time to embouchure experiments and other types of tone exploration, are wonderful to include in daily practice sessions anytime you can. In order to internalize the sounds, condition your embouchure muscles, and learn how to navigate between all of those beautiful flute tone sweet spots you are finding, it's important to have daily routines that not only allow you to stay in good flute shape with your current home bass sound, but also provide ample opportunities for discovering new levels of sound and new types of sounds. I think the most tried and true warm-up for flute tone is Moise long tones. But if you watched the introductory video to this course, you know that I didn't always have the best focus and discipline with exercises like this. As an undergraduate, my mind raced and I felt overly critical and frustrated anytime I tried to do something as simple and powerful as long tones. For this reason and so many more, I have written lots of exercises that help me feel more engaged and more motivated to do daily tone studies. Stay tuned at the end of this video and I'll share 3 of my favorite tone warm-up exercises with you. You may be engaging in tone studies more often than you realize. Anytime you are practicing your flute, you are either choosing to upgrade your tone on every single note you play, or you're choosing not to. When you engage in flute playing repetitions of any kind, you are thickening those myelin sheaths, gaining muscle memory, and conditioning yourself to play in certain ways with certain types of tones. Ignoring your tone quality by not listening might mean that you are accidentally conditioning yourself to play with a tone that you wouldn't really like if you were paying attention. To take advantage of the fact that everything on flute is a tone study, remember that everything is also melody. Every fast technical passage, especially when practiced slowly, is a chance to play with a gorgeous tone and learn more about all the elements of excellent flute playing. Indulge in curious, enthusiastic, appreciative, mindful, listening-based tone studies every moment that you practice, and you will be rewarded with an increasingly beautiful tone. I have collected countless tone clues over the course of my flute journey, and tone has always been a special focus for me. There was a time when I thought I already sounded pretty good, but I had a professor that never seemed satisfied with my tone. I didn't really understand the changes that they wanted me to make, so I had to dig deep and find a tool that worked the way my brain worked. These are my sound sheets. This one here represents a year and a half of collecting clues. This one represents another year, and this one represents 5 years. I call it my epic sound sheet. And all of these clues collected were part of my exploration of the magic and mystery of gorgeous flute tone. I'll put a link below to a video that explains details about how to make your own sound sheet, and I really hope you get started today. But for now, I want to point out that the reason these worked so well for me is that the title, the pictures, and the descriptions all resonated with me. They were in my own language. I want your sound sheet to light you up and speak your language. The next slide will contain the clues that I collected on these sound sheets, and I hope that you'll feel free to ask me questions in the comments if there's any clues that you'd like me to decipher. Here is a list of my top 10 reasons why it's good to remain radically flexible when embarking on your own tone studies and quests to find your most crystal clear and resonant home-based tone. Number 1, everyone's flute is different. Number 2, everyone's head joint is different. Number 3, different rooms have different acoustics. 4, everyone's head shape, mouth shape, tongue shape, jaw shape, teeth, cheekbones, throats, lungs, and entire bodies are different. 5, everyone has different musical backgrounds and therefore different musical preferences for what seems beautiful and makes sense to them. 6, different teachers have different tone and even embouchure preferences. 7, different genres, composers, and pieces have different tone color needs, and each experience with the different genres, composers, and pieces teaches you about different elements of flute tone. 8, the amount of hours you practice, the way you practice, and the consistency with which you practice changes your access to different types of tones. 9, your sound concept on flute can and should evolve over time. 10, there is no such thing as a perfect flute tone. As long as you're playing with the most beauty and clarity that you know how to access, your tone will be perfectly imperfect, just like everyone else's. Being radically flexible and following your path toward your most beautiful tone is a really big deal. Have you ever heard your own voice on a voicemail or recording and thought it sounded kind of weird? When it comes to the tension of opposites and how this applies to flute, the most obvious example I can think of is just how different a beautiful, clear, resonant tone sounds to the flutist's ears versus the audience's ears. I once took some piccolo lessons from a very well-known and respected piccoloist, and I was super excited to hear their tone up close. Imagine my surprise when the tone actually sounded woofy and kind of more air cloud and fuzz than core. It wasn't until I heard that same piccoloist in a grand concert hall a few hours after I had had a lesson one day that I finally realized the power of the air cloud to carry the ringing, singing, pinging core of the sound to the audience. That same piccoloist I had heard sound fuzzy in the afternoon in a carpeted room sounded transcendently beautiful in a glorious concert hall that night. I encourage you to experiment with recording yourself in different rooms, different acoustics, and also placing your phone or your microphone different distances away from you. Listening back, you will learn so much. Here's an exercise you can do right now to notice the sometimes dramatic difference in the way your sound hits your ears versus the audience's ears. First, play a low A, a nice clear low A. Then play that same A with your right hand. You can hold the flute with one hand on an A. Put your right hand right behind your ear and cup it so that it's bending toward you. You can even probably tell if you speak a little bit that your voice already sounds different. I love this exercise and it really does a lot to shift your perspective. Feel free to share in the comments what you learned when you tried it. Let's chat about tone colors. It's funny to me now because I love exploring colors in the sound, but when I was younger, I was kind of confused and frustrated by them because I didn't understand why that tone was supposed to be purple and that tone was supposed to be yellow, and I certainly didn't understand how to make a difference between them. I wasn't a literal color person. Now, if colors do make sense to you, I encourage you to explore them fully because they are a wonderful method by which to understand the different types of tone possible on the flute. But if the colors don't make sense to you, you can call them by any names you like. For example, a more hollow, transparent sound, you could call it airy, powdered sugar, cotton candy, hollow, wooden, wispy, fluffy, cool, icy, light, pastel, feminine. For that rich, dark sound, you could call it dense, opaque, chocolate, creamy, silvery, golden, brassy, edgy, warm, fiery, bold, dark, masculine. Any names that make sense to you are valid. I even had a student one time talk about a Sharpie sound versus a pencil sound. Now, as you're exploring these different colors, which don't have to be literal colors, you can try all different things to make different sounds. Different vowels make a huge difference in tone colors, but also any adjustments to air angle, air pressure, air speed, any embouchure experiments you do might yield different colors. And something that I think is kind of magical about the flute, even when you change your inner mood, especially if it's helping to bring to life the character and mood of the music you're playing, that will change the type of sound that you are making. So I encourage you to explore tone colors in whatever way makes sense to you. As we've already discussed, you can use any descriptive words you like to describe the different types of tone colors. For me, I like to talk about dark chocolate for rich core and powdered sugar for hollow, wispy, transparent sounds. I usually save powdered sugar for pianissimo or very special, intimate moments. Here is a demonstration of dark chocolate. And here's a demonstration of powdered sugar. Remember, you can use any words you like, but those are two of my favorites. I really feel for flute players that are super worried about sounding too fuzzy, too edgy, too aggressive, too wimpy, or even too out of flute shape. Don't get me wrong, it's a really good thing to find more clarity, roundness, effortlessness, power, and fluidity in your tone, but the worry itself can often cause more problems than it actually solves. Remember, love-based decisions are always more beautiful than fear-based ones. Move toward the tone you desire, not away from the weirdness you're worried about. Before you go on to collect more specific clues in the low, middle, and high register videos, I hope you'll take the time to watch the video linked below called Teach Yourself to Play with a Beautiful Sound and start your own sound sheet. Sometimes it's tempting to learn about tools but not actually use them. I promise you, this one is worth it as long as you're in it for the long game. I wish you all the best with your new sound sheet, your practice session today, and your continuing, ongoing flute adventures. Check the information below this video to find 3 daily warm-ups I highly recommend. The first is my epic flute warm-up. It's packed full of wonderful exercises that will help you find your gorgeous tone for the day. It's my tried and true. It takes less than 15 minutes. I tell myself as long as I play my epic flute warm-up today, I can have a clear flute conscience. The second one is my low register fondue warm-up. It's based on the first 4 notes of the flute part in Enesco's Cantabile and Presto. In the piano part, he writes fondue, which means melted. And I love using those intervals to find my way down to the lowest notes on the flute and condition my ears, my embouchure, my air, even my mind and heart to rich low register notes. The third is an extension of those famous Moïse long tones. Remember, I didn't have the most discipline and focus when I was an undergrad and first learned how to play them, but these Moïse long tones have some training wheels. I've thrown in some helpful fluttering, singing and playing, and harmonics so that you can really find those secret sweet spots along the way. I hope you'll try each one of these exercises and let me know about your experience and any questions you may have in the comments below. If you are enjoying this course so far, I hope you'll hop on over to www.fluteforyou.com and visit Carolyn Nussbaum Music Company's website. If you type my name in the search box, you'll find my 3 books filled with flute advice and exercises. There are 3 online courses, including one for flute teachers, and a really cool piece I wrote called Scarborough Fantasy, Theme and Soulful Variations for Solo Flute. I love my Miyazawa flute, and I hope you'll check out their amazing selection at miyazawa.com. Also, I'm the flute professor at the University of Missouri Kansas City Conservatory. If you're interested in studying flute with me and pursuing a music degree there, I'm happy to give you a complimentary online lesson before your audition. Just email me at t.sanchez@umkc.edu. Finally, there are lots of free resources at my website, practicejunkie.com.